Something that I rarely talk about on this app is my experience with Israelis in Israel. And it's mainly because of how jarringly similar I found Israelis to be to Americans, except I found that Israelis are just like the next iteration of Americans. And this is a very tough pill to swallow as an American myself. But this was truly proven to me last week when Donald Trump was elected, and I saw so many Democrats and liberals spew the most genocidal verbiage on this app freely. And although I was not shocked nor surprised, I was mortified. It is the same type of genocidal verbiage that I hear from Israelis, especially when I was in Israel. I think it's really important to understand that both of these countries have one thing in common, and it's that they are built on a lie. Okay, so the lie that Israel was built on is that 2,000 years ago, God gave this land to Jewish people, and so every Jewish person in the world has right over Palestine. The lie in which America was built on is also America's number one exporter, which is the American dream. And this is also a lie. It is the lie that we have the right to the pursuit of happiness, freedom, etc. And these lies are built to veil and mask that these two countries are actually colonial empires. And because Americans and Israelis cannot see that these countries, their governments, are colonial empires, they do not care about people across the world who are hurting because of their government. They feel completely disconnected, and they don't see that the problems of the people who their country is inflicting harm on has anything to do with anything that's happening here domestically. I saw the brilliant Noura Erakat speak the other day, and she said something really important that I've been thinking about. She said that Palestine is part of U.S. geography because this is a U.S. genocide, a U.S.-led genocide in Palestine. This is a U.S.-Israel occupation of Palestine. Without the U.S., Israel would not be able to occupy Palestine. It would not be able to commit a genocide on Palestine because they benefit from U.S. Taxpayer dollars, which they get billions of each year. They benefit off of U.S. weapons. The fighter jets that bomb and kill Palestinians in Gaza are made in the U.S. So without the U.S., Israel would not be able to occupy nor commit genocide on Palestinians. So Palestinians are a U.S. problem. It is a domestic problem. In the same way that U.S. has control over Puerto Rico. It is in the same way that Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. geography. In the fact that Puerto Ricans do not have the right to self-determination, nor do they have the right to participate in U.S. elections. It is in the same way that Hawaii is part of U.S. geography, even though this was a sovereign nation before it was illegally annexed. It is in the same way that Guantanamo Bay is part of U.S. geography. Even though, and I don't know if you know this, but each year America sends a check to Cuba for Guantanamo Bay, which Cuba refuses to cash because they see Guantanamo Bay as an illegal occupation of the U.S., which now the U.S. commits nefarious acts of torture on citizens of the world on that land. And for decades, Cuba has refused to cash in any of the checks that the U.S. has given them for Guantanamo Bay. I want you to understand this because I think that Americans see what's happening in Palestine as that's what's happening to those people over there. No. Palestinians are part of U.S. domestic issues. And I don't think that that is registering to Americans because they don't see Palestinians as citizens, so they're not a problem here. But they are in fact a problem. It is your tax dollars that is killing them. Palestinian tax dollars are not killing Americans. They are completely your problem. This has to be confronted. We must confront the issue that Palestinians are a U.S. problem. And the last thing I want to say is that if you are horrified by the fact that so many liberals and Democrats are on this app just saying the most genocidal shit and running to Starbucks and looking an absolute fool, I want you to understand that these people were always going to be a liability to the pro-Palestinian movement. it is really important to understand that. People who, one, did not really understand the history of Palestine or the history of Palestinian resistance, people who did not really understand what the Palestinian resistance was, people who really don't know what it is to actually build community, because they think that social media activism is real activism. They were always going to be a liability to the movement. And so it is a blessing in disguise that these people shown themselves, and the people who are focused on the task will continue to move forward. The people that I spent a year building community with are not out here acting an absolute fool. They're not running to Starbucks. They're not, screaming, I hope Gaza gets turned into a parking lot. They're not looking to who to point fingers at. They're not doing any of that. And I think that what makes a really good community is a community that shares certain values, but they're not trying to impose their ways of life onto each other. So I am in community with people who are part of the LGBT community, but they're not trying to impose their belief systems onto me. They're not trying to convince me that maybe I should explore my sexuality and why I should have a pronoun. They're not doing that. And I'm in community with Muslim women who wear a hijab, and they're not trying to impose on me why I should wear a hijab. They're not imposing on me why I should follow Islam. And I'm in community with Black Americans who also, some have voted for Kamala, but they weren't trying to impose on me that I should vote for Kamala, because they understand very well that even they wouldn't want to vote for a person that is committing genocide on their own people. And I think that when you have a group of people that respect each other and say, hey, our mutual and common belief is that we respect life and we respect freedoms, we're not trying to impose that shit onto each other. And so over my dead body, are we going to allow this government to kill a whole bunch of people on live stream? That is what makes a strong community. And if you were building community with people who are running to Starbucks, you need to reevaluate what it is that community means to you.